Here's the chair that I'm going to work on. I'm going to assemble this quickly. I want to get the proportions sort of like correct from this image. Not exactly the same, but I want to just look at the image and then make it in Maya as a quick sketch. So I'm going to start with the polygon cube. So when I start with the cube, remember I used a cube primitive, and I changed some of the dimensions here. So I did 0.8 for the width, 0.8 for the depth, and 10 for the height. I rounded up all these numbers. Also, I never work with the when I model, I don't work with the viewport 2.0. I'm going to switch it to legacy default viewport. So this is my first chair leg. So this I can copy paste it, I can duplicate it and move it in the back. So I'm going to turn on the wireframe on shaded, select it. Let's go back and look at the chair. So this is the first piece, and that's the back one. So I'm going to create all this part and copy it to the right side. So select it, duplicate it, Control D, W to move it back. And what I want to do is just go to the vertices, select them, and move them up so I can create that height. This is leaning back, and that's also leaning to the back. So there's like there are angles here that we need to kind of consider. Notice that this goes like to the seat, and then there's a straight piece here. Those things we need to kind of very focus on those very much. So whenever you see an object, you want to see, you want to make sure when the direction is changing. When things are changing, then we probably need to introduce an edge. So this is going straight, but then it turns, the direction is going to change here. So we need another edge to go down, and then another edge to change back to course to another angle. So that's what we need to do. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and what I'm going to do is select it and go to the mesh tools and use the insert edge loop tool to add an edge sort of over here and one over there. So if I want to be more accurate, I can click on the spacebar and go to my side view. Actually, I'm going to go to the front view here. So this is the front view. We want to take the viewport 2.0, turn it off. We want to turn off the grid and also turn on the wireframe on shaded. So these things you want to do for every viewport. Select the vertices, select these vertices, and move them up so they're kind of lined up with this guy. I mean, this is basically the angle. Now, if I'm on the side view, I can select this piece, tap the space bar, go to the perspective. This goes back a little bit. I don't see any difference on this. This is like the right size. It's the same size with that, so doesn't thin out. But that up here, it does get thinner. So I'm going to select this piece, move it back, and now I'm going to select only those vertices and move them towards the back too, so we can actually make this piece a little bit thinner. So we have, like, we started with getting the proportions ready. Now we need to introduce these other pieces here, like this one. So I can create a polygon cube. So create cube, and select the vertices. I'm going to shape it quickly, give it like a little bit of a preliminary shape, move it up. Now the pivot point I can center pivot. Always when you change stuff, you can actually center the pivot point. So now this is here. It's better if we work on the top view for this guy. So we can go to the top view, switch to legacy, turn on the wireframe on shaded, turn off the grid, press 4, So this is my piece. That's way too thin. I'm gonna press R to scale and scale it and move it in the center. Now I'm gonna go ahead and select the vertices and bring the vertices all the way so they can touch those other two pieces. I'm looking at this on the top view. So that's sort of where I can move this a little bit towards the out. Okay, so we need that piece now. This could be definitely done with just duplicating this. Also, this piece seems to be all the way to the all the way up, so I'm just gonna go ahead and like move it up and fine-tune this area a little bit more. I can select the vertices, these vertices, and move them back, move them down, and I'm gonna select these vertices here and move them so I can line them up with this guy. You can switch views. You can go okay, so I'm going to select this guy, press F to focus, so just review it, and duplicate it. Control D, move it down. So I'm going to use this piece. I'm reusing the same piece and like kind of like modifying it to become this little other piece of wood down there. So select the vertices. So I'm making this thinner. And I'm going to go to my front view and work that angle here. You can also use the ghost, the sort of like X-ray or ghosted mode. Like this is the X-ray, so you can actually see through. And make sure it's on legacy viewport and move this until it touches that edge. So this is pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and see. Okay, this needs to be further up. So I'm gonna just change this. And make that a little bit thinner. So I'm going to select the whole piece, press R, and thin it down a little bit. So the whole left side is done. I just need to select the whole piece and duplicate it, Control D, and move it to the right. Now I need another piece connecting these two together, and we need a couple of more pieces here. So let's work on this one. I'm going to make another. Actually, I'm going to use that, and I'll show you a trick how we can straighten it out. So Control D, move it, rotate it. Now I'm going to hold down the J key and rotate it every on the Y. So if I start rotating it on the Y, it snaps to every 15 degrees. So double check on the channel box that you have 90 degrees here. And I'm going to go to my top view and move this guy somewhere in the middle. I keep tapping on the spacebar to change views. This is straight, and I can move it all the way until it touches this area. But this is not straight because you remember we made that angle. So here's another trick. You can actually use the scale tool and scale it against it, and it will just straighten everything out, so it makes everything flat. Now I'm going to select it, W, move, and just bring it there. And this should be sort of in the middle. Okay, so now I need to borrow that piece, Control D, move it here, E to rotate, J, hold down the J, rotate it 90 degrees. I can go on the top view, move it. Switching views is important because then you can actually kind of be more accurate with your design. So I can go as close, I can really zoom in here. I can see until it touches. I see something here. I see that this piece. Okay. So that's fine. Okay. Select that, duplicate, move it back, press F. So that's the back piece. I'm going to select that, duplicate it, move it up, and I'm going to use that as my back piece here. And this is going to be angled, so I'm going to have to go to the side view, front view. Press 4 to see through. Get the vertices, and this I'm going to shape quickly just in here. So that's angled, and that's much wider here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and select. I can turn on the X-ray here on the perspective too, so I'm gonna turn on the X-ray. So this one. So I'm gonna select all these guys, move them down, something like that. Select it, duplicate it, move it down and forward. That would be fine. And now the only thing I'm left is with the seat. I just need to make the seat, and that's it. So I'm going to create like a polygon plane, flat plane, go to the top view, and move it in position. Now that's very large. Of course, I'm going to just have to like scale it. So I'm going to select the vertices and try to like wrap it around. So go to object mode. Whenever you're done object mode, move this up. If your pivot point is like off, modify, center pivot. So I'm gonna set this just on the chair. Sit here, that. Get the vertices, the back ones, and move them all the way to that end here. So as I did before, we have to like cut some pieces from that. That's why I'm making this as a flat plane, because if I made it like with a thickness, I would cut many more pieces that I needed. That's why I make it as a plane. So I make it easier for me that way. So this is the seat. It's just a flat plane. I'm going to use the insert edge loop tool and go close to this area and trim this piece, like add an edge loop here and an edge loop over there and one over here. So now I can get rid of these pieces. Now if I want to isolate something because I cannot really see through, what I do is Alt H to isolate, select the faces that I don't need, and delete them. If I want to go back from the isolation, I want to go display, show, last hidden. So here's my piece. Notice that now it's trimmed out. So notice that I trimmed it. So. And I'm going to just give it a little bit of an extrusion. So edit mesh, extrude. Let's do 0.4 thickness. So that we're done. Now that's the chair. And the last thing that I didn't mention before is to add some beveling. Beveling actually adds a nice finish to all those objects that they look very CG, made from a computer. Very sharp edges, which in reality you don't see that sharp of an edge. So I'm gonna just make that, break that edge sharpness. So the way to do it I'm going to select this guy. I'm just gonna this time I'm just gonna add bevels everywhere. I don't usually do that. I actually go and select only the contours of a shape, but this time I'm gonna do it just so we can see how it translates into the image here. If I turn off the wireframe on shaded, you can see that the chair is done, but it's very sharp. So I'm gonna select this piece, go edit mesh, bevel. Go to the options. So I'm gonna reset the settings. So there's like a fractional and an absolute bevel. I'm gonna use the absolute bevel and use like 0.2. Let's see that. Well, that's a lot of beveling, so I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna use 0.02. So the absolute is the same one. So I'm gonna hit apply. So that's looking good. So if it's looking good. And notice the difference. If I turn off the wireframe on shaded, you can see that there's a little highlight. That's the realistic way that you would see. We would have like a little bit of a bevel to everything. So I'm going to select everything now and add bevels. So I select these, all of these, and just add bevel. So now I finished the chair, and notice that I have a little bit of the light is, let's do this too. So notice how it's much more refined. So this is the chair fully done from this image that we got today.